Oh, we're live. Welcome back to the Armchair Attorney Podcast, episode 100. 100 times I've stepped behind this microphone. 100 times I've brought you interesting conversations with some of the leading figures in supply chain, logistics, and the law. We've had judges, we've had lawyers, we've had doctors and pastors, executives, salespeople, everything you can imagine, some of the best of the best. You know, if your network is your net worth, then I am wealthy beyond measure. I'm Matthew Leffler. This is episode 100 of the Armchair Attorney Podcast. This is something that I had been building to. I never knew for sure we'd make it, but here we are. Here you are. Thank you for tuning in, whether you're watching this thing live on LinkedIn or Facebook or X or YouTube or wherever else this might be going. You might be listening to this on Apple or Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. I am grateful for you. My hope is to bring you information that you can find useful, entertaining, and hopefully learn something. The twins are nearby. They're not asleep yet, and that's always an interesting challenge, but we're going to do the best we can to navigate it. If you have questions or comments, you can always post them. Sometimes I see them, sometimes I don't. I'm sorry if I don't see all of them. Joelle, nice to meet you. I hope you enjoyed today's broadcast. Now listen, if you do not know who I am, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Matthew Leffler. I am a lawyer, an adjunct law professor. I'm a board member, but I'm really somebody who never had a choice in this industry. Look, my grandfather fought in World War II. He was a tank commander. And when he left the service, he opened up his own trucking company. He was an owner-operator. The company was called Leffler and Sons. And what he did was he hauled grain throughout central Illinois. He grew that fleet to 6 pieces of power. Now, unfortunately, he ended up contracting polio, was in hospital for several months, and ended up losing the company. But he was able to eventually build back what he had done and became a mechanic. And that's kind of how my father got in the business, turning wrenches with his old man. Well, my dad graduated college in 1976. And when he did graduate, he went on to work at Roadway. That's pre-deregulation Roadway, by the way. One of the motor carriers that moved everything in this nation, CF, Roadway, and Yellow. And as my father would tell me, it was Yellow and CF who argued about who was number 2, because Roadway was always number 1. He still says if Roadway had remained independent, they'd still be making money. My parents are celebrating 50 years of marriage this weekend. 50 years. My mother could tolerate my father. That's incredible. Now, I didn't know a lot about supply chain when I was young. All I knew about supply chain was that it meant that my father was on the road half of the year. And I said to myself, I will never be in that business. I do not want to do that. But I never had a choice. I never had a chance. Here I am, 15 years after law school, still loving the industry that moves everything. If you love it, if it's in your house or at your doorstep or on the shelf, it came on a truck. Every single day, millions of men and women safely deliver freight on time and undamaged. It is orchestration at its very best. And this podcast is about celebration of that business. $1 trillion industry in the US alone. This is massive. You can't opt out of the supply chain. You're a part of it, whether you understand it or not. And that's why I do this, because there's something that you need to understand. If I can take interesting legal challenges or issues, or even just talk to people who make the supply chain work, it's what I'm all about. Now, none of this is possible without our sponsors, the people that help us keep the lights and the ring lights on. As always, I have my friends over at DAT, Dollar Truck. Since 1978, DAT has been helping motor carriers find freight. Brokers too, shippers need them as well. DAT is leading the charge on building out the most robust freight network imaginable. We've watched some of the great acquisitions this great company has had with Outgo and Trucker Tools. Then they're just getting started. Oh, I know Ken Adamo, the freight nerd, dat guy. He's got a lot of stuff in the works. You got to be paying attention to that. Now, if you're new to DAT, you can actually save money. If you go to the link in the show notes of this podcast, you can save 10% for the first year of using DAT, any package from my understanding. You just click the link. There you go. We have a new sponsor today. Oh, I love Ryan Joyce. I love Ryan Joyce. Do you know about Genlogs? I want you to know about Genlogs. Now, I don't know if you can see this very well. There it is. Look at me. I know what I'm doing. But here's a better picture of it. Genlogs is something that I think is one of the most fascinating companies in supply chain today. A blend of hardware and software. This company and these leaders are doing something that is changing the paradigm of freight intelligence. They are setting a new standard of care for motor carriers and brokers and shippers. Their network of cameras all across this nation are tracking trucks and trailers every single day. Millions and millions of assets being scanned. This, I'm telling you, is fascinating. And I urge you to check out the demo of Genlogs. Do it today. If you're missing a truck or missing a trailer, you have so many tools now at your disposal, and I'm so grateful for the partnership with the team at Genlogs. All right, enough of me talking about things. Let me set the stage. Let me set the stage for you. My next guest is somebody that you should know, and chances are you probably do. JJ Schickel is the founder of Eve Partners, a private equity firm that specializes in transportation logistics. He is the former CEO of Omni Logistics. You all remember Omni and Forward Air. That is the case that I still to this day think is the most important supply chain merger in my lifetime. I have no doubt in my lifetime, but it might be one of the most important you're ever going to deal with. It is absolutely incredible. But JJ is one of the most positive and kind people I have ever had the opportunity to collaborate with. As an adjunct law professor at Michigan State University College of Law, I was trying to teach second and third year law students about the intricacies of the supply chain. We need lawyers who understand this business. And JJ was gracious enough to offer his time to come and speak with my class. And that was something that I cannot thank him enough for doing. I mean, it is incredible the generosity that he displayed by giving his time and his expertise to a bunch of law students who were getting ready to prep for the bar exam. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a great show. 100 in, maybe 100 more to go. We've done a lot of iterations. We first called this thing the Uncertainty Hour. Then we renamed it Fleeting Conversations. And now we've settled, I think, I don't know, to the Armchair Attorney Podcast. Without further ado, let me introduce you to my friend and hopefully your soon-to-be friend, JJ Schickel. JJ!
So good to be here, Matt. Thanks so much for having me, and congrats on 100 and Friday the 13th, no less. I tried to wear my most festive Hawaiian shirt, trucker shirt day shirt that I could find. And I love that story of your dad and your grandpa. I mean, it's what happens, right? Transportation gets in your blood and you can't get it out. So it's great.
Even if you try, JJ, you can't quite escape. But I'm so grateful for you to be here. But for the folks who don't know you, let me just begin by saying, who are you? What do you do?
JJ Schickel. I'm a partner with Eve Partners. I've been doing transportation and logistics and supply chain since the late 90s, and have had amazing journey along the way, meeting amazing people like you. And I love this industry. Once I had a little touch of it, I never looked back. So I've been doing nothing but supply chain ever since.
Well, tell me, how do you get into the business? How do you start into what is now like the place that you don't think you can escape from?
My journey into it was a little different. I was a bit wayward. I was trying to figure out what my calling was going to be. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a house where my parents prioritized education. I went to university and I wanted to be an architect. I did everything along the way to be an architect, and then found out I couldn't draw. So that was the end of that journey. But I was good at accounting, which really wasn't on my path of things to go do. But I was like, okay, maybe this is it, and went and did that for a while. And I really didn't like that either. I lasted almost a year at Deloitte and Touche. Amazing place, amazing people. It just wasn't the place for me. I found my way into just through really good luck. Actually, found my way into investment banking, and there I became a technology investment banker. And I really enjoyed finance. I think what I really enjoyed learning there. Was just how the capital side of America works, and it's really interesting. It was like a really amazing journey into the behind the curtain scene of how great ideas become companies in this country, and I really loved that part of it. The industry part of it, not so much. I mean, technology is amazing, and it was a great place to be in an industry focused group. But in the mid '90s, that's when things were moving from more industrial technology to kind of internet. And so I started looking for something else to do. I was fortunate enough to find a CFO job for an amazing trucking company called Centurion Auto Transport. At the time, it was the largest non-union car hauler in the United States, and I fell in love with the people, fell in love with the industry, and never looked back. I mean, I just have always. So I found it through accident, but I'm so lucky to have had that happen, and it's been an amazing journey.
I find that fascinating. So you get a peek at the operating ratios of motor carriers and how they are able to safely deliver freight on time and undamaged, and then you start making a transition. Like, when did you get more into like the investment side of the business?
So I think like the exciting thing, particularly in the mid '90s, was the company that I was working for, Centurion. When because we were non-union, everything was import, and we would go and pick up a carload of Porsches at the port. This was all finished vehicles, so we would pick up these trucks that go down the road carrying all these cars. We would go to the port, pick those up. And you really wouldn't know if the truckload of, I don't know, $1 million worth of Porsches made it to the dealer or not until someone picked up the phone and called you and said, hey, thanks. Appreciate
Track and
you.
trace. That's it.
You can bill me now. And so like I always said, okay, this is a really good place for technology. And also it happened to have been a very underrepresented industry relative to capital markets. So most institutional investors, meaning private equity, et cetera, didn't have allocations. Like you said, it's $1 trillion domestic industry. It's about 7 trillion across the G10. There's very little representation at the time in the institutional side. And I said, this is a good place for my skill sets to hopefully make a difference and be additive to the companies that I got involved with. So that was the case at Centurion. I was then in a really interesting startup that I was a part of where we utilized technology to go and cross-sell our existing customers.
I see.
That business is still around today. It's called Amports. And in that business, we actually brought on and partnered with Lincolnshire Management, which is a private equity firm. So I had like a really amazing crash course over a period of about 5 or 6 years of learning about transportation, seeing how the capital markets were influencing it and not influencing it, to learn where the opportunities were. And same with technology. And that technology was the real piece that created the massive unlock. And so that unlock to be able to go, if you have amazing customers, I can go and through capital, M&A, and mergers and acquisitions. So add a service at scale. So through capital, technology, and those services, you can go cross-sell your amazing customers into new services. And that went extremely well. And then in 2002, I started EVE Partners, which stands for Equity Value Enhancement. And the idea was to go and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Transportation Company, you have an amazing company with a great list of customers. Let us come in and help you cross-sell and unlock a lot of that value inside of your customer base. And so that was 2002. Been doing the same thing ever since.
Well, it's incredible because like when I first met you and I researched about you, you've done over $11 billion. That's billion with a B. In mergers and acquisitions in transportation logistics, over 150 deals. That is monumental. Did you know? That's what gets the gray hair. I only done a couple, so my hair still remains, I think, somewhat brownish. But like, did you know starting this thing that you were going to have that many deals, like that level of success? Was that what you were anticipating? Was that something you kind of discovered as you continued to grow the business?
I think it just, I think through the journey of not being able to draw and not being able to do things that I really just wanted to be in a place where I was valued by my teammates. And I knew that the skills from the tech side and the skills from the capital market side were going to create a tremendous unlock in many, not all, but in many of the instances where I could get in and work with founders and owners and management teams. And so for me, that was good enough, right?
Mm.
And for me, that was really gave me the conviction and the passion that, hey, this is a good path, and I'm happy every day I wake up. And if you can add value and be a valued teammate, then life's pretty good. And along the way, as often happens, um, you meet good people, and those people come in on your team, and as they say, if you hire people that are better than you, I think good things happen. And so that's what happened in Eve Partners. We have, in my opinion, the best people in the world that do what we do, and that's been a huge part of kind of that trajectory beyond those early years.
Well, see, there's like, you say you didn't become an architect, but like, I fundamentally think that that's what you are now. I mean, you're an architect for organizations. You can look at a great company and say, I understand where you're being unable to be displaced. I can see where your growth is going to look like, but here are the other things we can unlock for you through cross-selling, through M&A and all of this. And you really are still an architect. Do you think of yourself as an architect? Because that is exactly how I see you.
Well, I hadn't really thought of it in those terms, but I think the joy is there's definitely, in my mind anyways, a massive amount of beauty in taking a company from a current commercial position to a desired commercial position, whatever that is. And the joy of that journey, and sometimes it worked, it's not always worked, right? Like, so we talk about the ones that happen. There's a lot of them that didn't happen, or got deviated along the way, and a lot of lessons, and a lot of tough lessons along the way, a lot of some lucky breaks along the way. But I mean, I think the key here is it certainly makes you appreciate when you do get a drawing right.
Yeah, well, it's like, I think of it. Okay, so when you're an architect, you have to think about gravity and force and what things can. And in the business, there's other rules, like financial rules. And so as you build Eve Partners, it's not just Eve Partners; it's the kind of private equity side, EBITDA, all this other stuff. But there's also this innovation side, the Eve Atlas, I believe, and Tiago, who's part of that team, and you guys invest in crazy things. Like, tell me a little bit about, like, what does the venture capital side look like in your mind?
Yeah. So in Tiago is one of our teammates. He runs the venture capital side, like you're talking about. Our VC side is called Eve Atlas, and Tiago is, as I mentioned, when you kind of are heading down the road and you meet better and better teammates. I mean, Tiago has planets named after him. I mean, he had the DOD banging on his door when he was 16 because he built a nuclear reactor in his basement. So this is not a guy
he has
that
a Wikipedia page.
I don't really understand what comes out of his mouth, but it's really smart. And no, but like he's we have a vision. As a firm, we want to be valuable at different parts of the lifestyle, like the transportation company life cycle. So if you think about startups, early stage, a lot of those early stage technologies are now becoming, later stage because there's so much capital going into the build out of these things. And I've been, like I said, kind of around technology in these companies for many years, but only in the last few years have I really seen where the ROI is so achievable, right? So you can actually, in a cost-effective way, you've talked about velocity, and I'm involved with velocity. You think about Elon's going to roll out robots, and they're going to be in every home. Well, somebody's got to service those. Someone's got to make sure they're working right. Things Geek Squad, Velocity's Geek Squad for robots, right? And so like I think about like we're in a place now where technologies in the ROI is really starting to manifest and happen in a really helpful way. And so like Tiago can see, if I can see 100 yards down the road, Tiago sees like 10 miles down the road at least. I don't even know that, you know, the metric's probably way off. But you know, it's fun to be around people like that because it is a window into the future and the great things that are going to happen to the transportation space. So we have that piece and various different parts of the life cycle. So big shit. You need to get Tiago on the show.
Absolutely. Well, I just like what I love about your background and your depth of knowledge in the space is that you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And so having that historical, like this is how it was done before. There was, you know, devices on every single truck and every single trailer and every single pallet. This is how we were able to do it. That's like with my talk with my father about his experiences at Roadway. I mean, it was like a dime. Every January 1st, you're out there looking to put eyes on trailers because there was no other way to track that stuff unless you physically looked at it and touched it. And the path of innovation moves in one direction. Like it is going forward. And whether you want it to or not, it still moves in that direction. Now, I see your hat. The audience has been waiting for me to start talking about Omni.
What?
I am so excited. So this is let me give a little bit, let me set the stage for the audience as to my interaction with Omni initially. So I get this call from FreightWaves, and I love the team at FreightWaves, Dooner and Craig Fuller, phenomenal people. And they say, hey, there's this case in Tennessee, and the case in Tennessee has to do with Omni Logistics and Forward Air. And I get involved much later in the story, but I want to get from your perspective, your experience, what was going on? Like how did Forward Air come to acquire or want to acquire Omni Logistics?
Yeah, so it's a great question. There's a lot to there's certainly a lot to unpack there, and you and I could probably go on for a long time on this topic alone. And it's important to note that these perspectives are my perspectives. So like there's certainly many sides to this story, but Forward Air is an amazing company, has been around 41, 42 years. For that entire period of time, they have served as effectively the airport to airport expedited LTL provider for forwarders. And they've always effectively been used intermediaries to sell, to get their business. So those forwarders are intermediaries to the end customer, right?
I see.
In the case of Omni was, is and was a forwarder. And we did a tremendous amount of work with Forward Air. They're one of our key partners. And when I say partner, I mean vendor, but they're one of our key partners. Probably our largest out of 400 partners / vendors. So very, very important to us. And I think go ahead.
Yeah. So for the folks who aren't super familiar with supply chain, so a freight forwarder, that is the organization working with all of the international manufacturers and distributors trying to bring things into the country. So you're working with these big customers that need to get product to the United States, and you're helping them get into the network of a Forward Air or other expedited trucking companies. Is that kind of a fair characterization?
Yeah, so it could be, in the case of Omni, that could be 100% accurate as to what you're describing with regard to what a forwarder is. In the case of Omni, I think we had 7,000 customers. I think 99% of them were US based customers. So a lot of what we were doing was managing their domestic moves, domestic expedited moves, and many of those moves are probably parts of their supply chain that are coming in internationally.
I see.
So a big portion, and we did and do quite a bit of international business as well, but it's all for U.S. based customers. So we're managing their supply chains throughout the globe.
Yeah, so like an NVIDIA or someone like that. That's like you're solving their problems with bringing in stuff and domestically moving them around the country.
100%. And it could be that we're managing a piece of their, so it's a US based company, but we're managing a piece of their supply chain internationally.
I see.
So it could be domestic, it could be international, but these are all domestic companies that Omni is handling. But it could be that. It could be just simply moving a piece of freight from a facility in Hong Kong to a location somewhere else, or from Taiwan to Hong Kong or Singapore. So the supply chains are incredibly vast. They're incredibly sophisticated, especially with tech, media, telecom, and life sciences, which was the bulk of our customers. So those supply chains tend to be very extended and very precise, and therefore most all of those moves require some kind of white glove expedited management of their freight.
Okay, so then Forward Air comes knocking and they say, "Hey, you've been a great customer of ours. We loved working with you. Maybe we should do a deal." Is that like, how do they approach you? How does someone who's a CEO of a company get approached by another business saying, "Hey, we should do something"? How does that work? Is that like dating?
Yeah, so it's funny, like when we first got approached by them, we were not for sale. So a lot of times, many of the transactions that you read about in the news typically originate by a company saying, their board deciding, hey, it's time to sell the company. Let's go hire an investment bank and let's go run a process to find a buyer that'll pay the highest price. In our particular case, we were not for sale. So we were actually in the middle of a very large transaction with one of our competitors. We thought it was an amazing, super excited and heading down that path. And when Forward Air knocked on our door, we were not thinking about selling at all. We have Omni was an amazing company and with amazing people with a very bright future, and so selling wasn't a thing on the drawing board for us. However, Forward Air presented something that I never thought Forward Air would do. We never thought Forward Air would actually do a deal with one of their intermediaries, and we saw that, if that's what they're going to do, and they want to do that with us, we have to do this. This will be the most important transaction in logistics in my lifetime. I think there's just a lot of nuances and dynamics to that sector where I think this is a game changer for the domestic landscape for what they do. And so for us, we looked up and said, hey, we'll do it, but we need it to be all stock because we're not sellers. We want to be partners. Let's lock arms. Let's all be shareholders and partners together and keep going. And this is the setup for Tennessee.
Yes.
Right? That stock, that little comment about the stock ended up being the entire battleground for the lawyers and for the activists to try to go. And that became the attack vector for, basically the next 120 days.
Yeah, so I want to dive into the shareholder voting piece in a moment, but I want to just kind of help again the audience understand a little bit more. So Forward Air has built this incredible moat in this LTL movement between airports, and you gave me an example in a prior conversation, like how this kind of compares to the travel agencies. Like, can you kind of talk to the audience a little bit, like how you saw what Omni did as it relates to kind of like thinking of airports as the kind of the metaphor or the example?
Yeah. So if you think of like Forward Air as, and this is the analogy I gave for the unindoctrinated to forwarding space, right? Like, so you got to kind of live and roll around in that area for a while to really understand the nuances. But just a simple analogy would be, imagine Forward Air is the only nationwide airline. And you can go anywhere to anywhere on that airline. And you always would, and think about like how things historically were with, if you're old enough like me, if you wanted to fly from New York to Chicago, you had to get a travel agent. Your travel agent would book your tickets. They would mail you your tickets. And the reason for that was because they were the ones who had access to the computers to actually book you into the network. So it wasn't like everyone had the ability to just, buy a ticket off your phone or on your computer into a Delta airline flight. And so, and because of that, there was this layer of intermediaries for domestic flights that existed since the beginning of airlines, and the technology afforded afforded an opportunity for the airlines to have a direct relationship with their customers and create a more dynamic pricing model and allow people to book directly. So, kind of my view was this was the opportunity to cut out that intermediary layer, and I think that's what will happen. I think this is the kind of critical moment in the supply chain with regard to how that freight gets booked.
Yeah, and I think the really interesting part to keep in mind is like, once Forward Air is considering doing this, whether it's you or somebody else, like now that the dynamic will change at some point, because now we have clearly communicated that they're the intent.
If it wasn't us, it would have been very concerning, right? Like, so
Exactly.
which is also why there's been just a lot of noise around this transaction for a long time.
So the next part I'm going to say to anyone who's listening or watching, let me be very clear. I am a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. Nothing that I say is meant to be legal advice. If you think you need a lawyer, you probably do. It's not going to be me. So that disclaimer aside.
Wait, where are we going? Where are we getting ready to go here?
Okay, so this is the part where I get involved. So I get this call from the Freightways team. Again, love the team at Freightways, big fans of all the folks over there. And they asked me to look at this case. And so here's the facts as I understood them, reading the legal documents and reading like kind of the tea leaves as best I could. Forward Air is a Tennessee-based company. And Tennessee has a law that says if there's a change of control that exceeds 20%. So someone else comes in and gets over 20% voting shares. It triggers a shareholder vote. Now, in the world of M&A, from my experience, time is of the essence in almost every single deal. And if the acquiring entity doesn't want to have shareholders, they're going to structure these deals in a way to not have shareholders vote. And so this is what happens. The deal that's struck is, and again, this is from memory, you know better than I do, I suspect, 20% voting rights for Omni, and there's going to be the 17% or some other percentage non-voting pure dividend shares. I think it was 13% dividend, but I don't know for sure. But those shares could be converted at a later time, not now, but at a later time. And so there's an injunction in Tennessee. And the question becomes, can the deal be stopped? I get to look and go, no, of course not. Like I read the law. I know that both parties are represented by very good lawyers who know how to read this stuff. And that's kind of when I get involved. So you're in this process. You weren't for sale. They come to you. You see where the trajectory of this industry might go. What is going on in your mind? What are you thinking about all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's an incredibly interesting part of global capitalism, and in particular American capitalism. You have different states, and you have federal law, you got state law. Each state can have different ways, and some of it is designed to protect the companies in that state from takeovers, and so there's a massive body of law out there. And in looking back on it now, had we actually said, hey, we'll just take half cash, and the transaction amounted to a little over $3 billion at the time. If we'd said, hey, we'll take half cash and half stock, we would have never had this issue of crossing the 20% threshold.
Yeah.
So ultimately, and when we entered it, I don't think anyone really was like, oh, we got this 20% threshold. I mean, we have very smart advisors. They structured this way to, kind of quote unquote, get around that. Again, I'm no lawyer, so I'm using my Southern interpretation of what that actually what it was, but there was precedent for it, and in all these precedents were cited, so it was totally in bounds, but it was designed to kind of navigate that issue. But again, had we just taken cash, had we not crossed over that threshold. So the irony is, wanting to be partners and wanting it to be in the form of stock and us all be shareholders together is ultimately what triggered this event. Now, we were, I think I will tell you myself, when we announced the transaction and, kind of around August 10th timeframe.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't think for a second this was going to be an issue, right? So And like, this is really when the fireworks began. So I don't think anyone was like, oh, we're going to have an issue here. I mean, this was bulletproof. It was well documented. Like you said, I mean, some of the smartest people I've ever been around were documenting this, and
this is not their first rodeo.
Rooms with 50 lawyers all working on this problem, and very, very competent people.
Well, I think I've always heard like that time kills deals. So the longer you can delay something. So these shareholders that sued, I can't opine about what they were thinking, but clearly they didn't win. I mean, I would have, had I been advising them, I'd say you're not going to win this, but maybe their entire idea was to slow it down. And by the time it began to slow down, it became, at some point for you, it became clear that Forward Air might not want to continue this. So when did you kind of get the idea that, hey, because publicly everyone was saying we're going to get this thing done as soon as the injunction's gone. But when did you kind of figure out, okay, maybe this isn't going to happen the way we thought it was going to happen?
Yeah, so I think it's important to just break this apart a little bit. So in the way public company merger and acquisitions work, you announce the deal, but you don't actually close until a time period later. And that's because you've got the regulatory filings and different things that you've got to get through. But for in our particular case, we announced the transaction on August 10th or whatever it was, and it was a binding deal.
Yeah.
The only way we could get out of that transaction was if the government said, we're not going to let you do the deal.
Or so I think both said, we're not doing it anymore.
Or if you both said, hey, for whatever reason, we're not going to do it. So, I mean, basically the deal, and like, you wouldn't do it if you really thought there was going to be a regulatory issue. And so, I mean, for everyone's perspectives, the deal was done on August 10th. Yeah. We just had to get through that time period, and we started working on integration and different things. I think what is important to also understand is that the stock of Forward Air was trading at roughly 110. Maybe it went down to 80 or 85. This is not unusual for an acquirer's stock to go down, especially when there's a lot of stock that's issued. So it's not unusual for that to happen for a period of time. However, what I learned, because I don't spend a massive amount of time in capital market in the public company arena, what I learned is that when stock goes down around a merger, between the signing or when it's announced versus when it closes, it's effectively the dinner bell for activists.
Interesting.
So, because the stock went down, you have these activists. And by the way, I've been told, I've not gone out and done a tally myself, but by really capital markets based people, that 20% of all S&P companies have activist campaigns going on. And so these activists saw the share price go down. In a lot of ways, have no idea what the companies do. Doesn't matter. They're going to buy the stock and they're going to try to blow the deal up. And that is really where the whole Tennessee thing happened, because I don't think people were like, wandering around trying to say this Tennessee thing was a huge issue. I think what happened was the stock went down, which was normal. The activists went to, bought the stock and started trying to break it up, which was normal.
Yeah.
But they found this Tennessee, and by the way, they're very well advised by lawyers.
Absolutely. We're the cause of and solution to all the problems.
And they found this little thread in Tennessee, and they started pulling on it. And we obviously were not clueless about Tennessee, but we had navigated the Tennessee law appropriately. But to your point, if you can stretch out the timing and create all these injunctions and create enough noise, time can kill deals, right? So like this is now kind of the kind of backdrop starts to slightly shift.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you get the inclination that I think most people knew this was going to get dismissed, like the injunction was going to go away. But it became kind of clear towards this end part of the injunction still kind of in place that Forward Air might be getting cold feet. Now, I know regardless of like what was motivating them, you realized that maybe they're going to try to walk away. What happens next is what I consider the part that gets me the most excited. Is we find ourselves in the Madison Square Garden of business disputes in the Delaware Court of Chancery. And this is mind-boggling. So what is happening as this transition from Tennessee to Delaware? What's going on?
So let's talk about the how, because I think the how is important. Look, this is my perspective. I don't think anyone ever believed that I don't think anyone on either side ever believed these two companies shouldn't be together. I think it was a brilliant idea by their executive team and by their board. I think everyone, since I first got in the space in the late 90s, has always been saying, boy, if Forward Air ever does blank, it'll be a game changer.
That's right.
Just no one ever, when you see that never change for 20 something years, you just don't ever expect it to happen. So I think it was the right idea. I think people had been saying this would be, and by the way, there's no Harvard Business School case study that says having intermediaries instead of your end customers is the right model.
Yeah,
right. So
right.
This was,
we need more brokers. We need
this
brokers
was an
brokers.
this was an obvious step. I just think a lot of people had thought it would never happen. But I think the real interesting thing, again, back to kind of capital markets and the different dynamics that you either see or you don't see out in the bushes when you're walking, is that what the pressure that activists can put on management teams. They ran a really aggressive campaign about removing managers and board members from Forward Air. So I think when they realize, okay, playbook in Tennessee isn't going to work, let's go to work on them personally and say, look, you've destroyed shareholder value, you need to get out of this deal. Again, my perspective, I think it's a lot to ask any person to put a merger ahead of their personal family interests, right? And so I don't think it was an unreasonable standard to get cold feet. I obviously, I felt like we had the right idea, and it's a tough and easy thing to say, hey, let's just push through. But it wasn't amount of pressure I was dealing with. Their team was dealing, and their board was dealing with people saying, we're going to replace you. And you can do that. Like, this is something in public companies, there are mechanisms where you can go and remove people.
Yeah.
And so it's different than someone saying, oh, I'm going to remove me. Like that's, you can't, it's not that easy.
Yeah, that's right.
But for someone you don't know to say that, but for them, someone they don't know can say that. And there are actually mechanisms and proxies where you can go and remove those people. So I think that's where things started to go, and that's when in October the deal started to go the wrong direction. Yeah. And so that's when that's when things got complicated. So then you look up and you say, oh my gosh, this is a binding deal, and now we're dealing with a counterparty who's trying to get out of it. And for the reasons I mentioned. And so like that was my opinion. Yeah. Your legal team's going to come up with a million reasons why you should get out of that deal. And it's not going to be because you're going to lose your job, right? You're going to come up with other reasons. And I think that's when, we looked up and said, we got to go get, kind of counsel to deal with this issue. We went and hired Wachtel, which is, in my opinion, the top firm in the world with this. We hired Bill Savitt and his amazing team. Bill Savitt happens to be the same team that fought Elon Musk in the Twitter case, right? So I mean, this is the LeBron James of that arena, and it was a pleasure working with all of them and watching and learning about that whole world of it. I had never had an experience like that, and to your point, hopefully my one and only foray in the Madison Square Garden. So, but it was amazing.
I mean, I think there's a couple of things I want to kind of pull threads on a little bit. So one thing is the point about like publicly traded companies. That's a great note. Most people don't realize the kind of things you have to do as a publicly traded company and how people can just jump in and then start doing things against what managers already decided.
It's wild.
I've always heard it when I had a professor say, like, running a publicly traded company is running two companies simultaneously. One is like your actual business, and then it's the compliance and all the other effects of being a publicly traded company. And it's like, oh, I that makes sense to me now. I think it's also really interesting because you are faced in this moment with a very, very heavy question. And if you believe in the fundamentals of the deal, that ultimately, if Forward Air is going to go out to market and find a forwarder to partner with, to put on a rocket ship to help them grow, because their moat is their moat, but what else can they do? And if you see that as an eventuality, so it's not a probability anymore. It's this is likely to happen. This is going to happen. This is inevitably going to happen. You have to be convinced, and you have to have conviction to go into this adverse litigation. And the Elon Musk Twitter case, I covered that too many years ago, and we all learned a lot about specific performance. And I have countless times on What the Truck and other places explaining what this was. And you're now faced with the person you are going to marry, even if they publicly say one thing, but you think privately they maybe still agree with the nature of the deal. What is your, like, how are you staying, grounded and prepared, running your business as you've always been doing, but also embroiled in adverse litigation with your biggest supplier, your biggest partner?
It was a very difficult time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But I really believed in this. I still believe in it. I think it's going to be a game changer. We had a bit of slow start because there was a lot of management transition right after the closing. But these are two amazing companies, and I think like the regret in the rearview mirror is just, cumulatively there was 8,000 or 9,000 amazing employees and 7,000 or 8,000 customers that deserve better. This was a very public divorce or whatever, and that's one part of the process that's unfortunate. The public arena, it's designed to put a lot of pressure on people to get them to break. And I think there was pressure being applied to them. And then simultaneously there was pressure being applied to us. And that was very difficult. It was difficult to look at our teammates at Omni and say, this is the right move. Let's keep going. But I will also say, the sorties from the activists stopped when Forward Air started fighting the transaction, and therefore I've honestly believed that this was them just carrying out. They knew they couldn't get out of the deal.
Yeah.
So I think this was, in my mind, and maybe naively, or obviously looking backwards, maybe more naively, but this was a situation where you do have shareholders. You have to represent your shareholders. Those activists were shareholders, and so they're very loud shareholders. And you got to do your job. And so I think on their side they had a certain amount of pressures that they were dealing with, and on our side we had our set of pressures. But in my mind, I never thought that we would get to the goal line and feel any differently about the merits of the deal, right? I never once felt like this had anything to do with that. So, so for me, it was easy. It was the right move. It's absolutely the right move. And, kind of pretty much everyone that I talked to in the industry echoed the same thing. And so we just had to lock arms and keep pushing on as a company. And it was tough days.
Yeah, it's interesting because people were asking, like they had Forward Air had alleged material breach, and I remember speaking all the time to people and saying, change of market conditions is not a material breach of a contract. Like that was it was so interesting to take a real life case unfolding and then explain these legal principles. But to your point, there are men and women that are impacted by these things. But so much in adverse litigation, it never goes to trial. It's the hours or minutes before it's supposed to go, and it's settled on courthouse, in the hallways. What is that like to be ready, and then we're all on this, we're on the same team now?
It was a bit surreal. You hear the stories of settling. But like, look, we went to the DuPont Hotel in Delaware, where, to your point, if there's a Madison Square Gardens, this is the hotel attached to it.
There you go.
And the story, the amazing stories of all the companies and cases that had come through there, and talking to the hotel staff about different people who had stayed in different, this is where so and so stayed during this, blank case, and for you guys, it would be like the Revlon case. It would be meaning the lawyers who always talk about the Revlon case. So like you have all these really amazing stories that have come through there. But it's a quite intimidating process. I think we basically we had probably 50 lawyers that went and kind of moved down there from New York. We all kind of moved down there one day, and we had a temporary office. It was the whole top floor of a building. Wow. I'm sure Forward Air had the same exact situation. I believe there was 110 million documents that were kind of in there, like like hallways full.
This is like months
hallways full of binders, right?
That's insanity.
And so the magnitude of this, it tests your conviction, but we never had it never tested the merits of it. It just tested just the amount of pain and effort you had to go through to kind of get to that goal line. So we get to that day. I think there's so many like twists and turns of this, but there's actually what's called an outside date. And the head of the Chancery Court, Ms. McCormick, she was our judge presiding over our case. Happened to be the same one over Twitter, but we had like what's called an outside date. And there was we were supposed to start on a Friday, and it was a 4-day trial. And that timeline was designed to fit the outside date.
Yeah.
But then on Friday, it snowed and the states shut down the courts. So like we are literally up against the outside date, and here it is snowing. And, so anyways, we were literally up against the wall. The Delaware Chancery Court, just did an amazing job accommodating the case. And, it was just like super, super, super inspiring kind of part of our whole process in America. And so anyways, it was wild. And that morning of the settlement was the first day of testimony. I was the first one supposed to go on.
You were ready to go.
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go sit up there for, I don't know, a day, whatever it was going to be, and play trivia, question trivia. You know how that goes. And so it got settled, and it was the right answer. I mean, we didn't want to. We knew it was going to, like my 2 cents is, we knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
The settlement was a byproduct of, let's not go air out all our dirty laundry or whatever that is, right? Like, let's not go punch each other publicly and then get married on Tuesday, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Let's just get this done and so that was a wild process.
Now, the way that the announcement happens, you are not part of the organization. Like you are effectively like let go right as this deal happens. Is that how to think about this? Because like there's not been a lot in the press about like what happened right when that deal is done. What takes place?
Are you trying to like get me to like, is this that moment where you break down your interviewee, that you break me right here on camera? No, I mean, like, so I did get let go. I was look, I mean, we did this as a merger. We took stock. We planned on being partners. I was contractually president of the combined business, and I was supposed to be CEO within 2 years, right? So I'm planning on being at that company until I retire. Yeah. I think I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I think it's going to be an amazing. It's an amazing company, and it will be an amazing company. It would have been a great place to ride out, your career, right? Like, so that was my game plan. The fact that we, kind of had to go dust it up in the public arena, it really never fazed me. I never thought for a second, me and most of my management team at Omni were going to be let go. So when the closing happened, and I say that because yes, we had been in a period but again, I thought it was because they needed to go do that, and we
Yeah,
we had to kind of like force the closing, and that would have been enough to quote unquote appease the activists. And so when I got terminated, my team got terminated, that was completely a surprise. And I think I was surprised for a number of reasons. Number one, I just didn't believe it. But even if that was the case, we had been in this legal wrangling since October, and it closed in late January.
Yeah.
So that's October, November, December, January. It's almost, like 3-4 months of us not having talked to each other. Like, so
and you're still doing business together the entire time.
We're still doing business, but the lawyers tell you to quit talking to each other, right? So like the management team, our 2 management teams quit talking to each other 3 times, 3 months across corporate America, especially during that time period, was an eternity. So I never thought that you would let your management team go. There are things like, hey, JJ, do you have any meetings this week? Like, what's your calendar look like for the next month?
What's the handoff?
And so there was, so I would have expected at least a 6-month handoff or something like that. But look, we got cut, kind of that happened, and
well, a lot of the
and that happens. I mean, I still look back and go, I was just incredibly naive because I never would have expected. This is a service business; it's about people. I just never would have expected that to have actually happened, honestly.
Well, and then you fast forward, and then a lot of the Forward Air folks are also let go. So it's like a whole new team for kind of both organizations as they begin this integration. Do you have any idea how is that combo coming together at this point? How is the integration going?
Yeah, I mean, like it's interesting, right? Because you think about going back to the architect analogy. You basically had 2 architects, 2 primary architects, which are the 2 CEOs, me and Tom Schmidt, who I thought we did a tremendous amount of work and had a really good game plan. And really understood the dynamics of our marketplace. And essentially, you kind of threw out the 2 architects, threw out the architectural plans, and then said to a new team, "Here, go build it." And that's tough. That's not fair to it's not fair to the employees. It's not fair to the new people, the new leadership that get put into that position. And I say it's not fair because you're inheriting things that someone else decided, and you have to have conviction to go through a lot of pain. You don't just wake up and run a marathon. You got to be like, I got to get it done. And
I tried, it didn't work.
And there's going to be parts of it that are going to hurt and make you want to quit and like cry. And, so like, I just think the team that they have in place has done an amazing job. And I think they're, doing a wonderful job. But I think we lost some time because they had to get put into a situation where they didn't have someone say to them in an orderly fashion, like, hey, here's what I do, and here's what we're working on, and here's the playbook. And so I think it's catching its stride and rolling, and kudos to the people that are still there. Kudos to the people that, there's a lot of grace, all mergers require a tremendous amount of grace and patience. Customers have to be well informed, and they also have to give a lot of patience and grace because there's systems integration and there's all kinds of things. Yeah. But there's a lot of good that this merger provides to all those constituents. And so I think it's going to be a really special story, but it's just now starting to hit its stride, in my opinion.
I like the way we go back to that architect analogy, and like you've designed something, you've created something that will endure. And even if you're not operating that thing that you created, the value and the thesis is still there. It's still going to do what it's going to do. And all these things happen the way they're supposed to happen, whether we want them to or not. Like that is the way the cards are kind of dealt. And I imagine, like, I'm just thinking as if I was you, if you knew going in that you would lose your job, you'd still do that deal. You'd still do that opportunity because it makes sense. And just because the world may disagree temporarily or it might have some initial pain for you, it still makes sense. It's still the most beautiful design you can put together. Am I right?
100%. And I think the difference is, um, you you can build you can build a very beautiful version of that if you know that, like, if somebody had said, hey, we want to do this, but we're gonna we're gonna like get rid of you and your team afterwards, we would have said, okay, makes sense, we still want to do this. This is like the most important thing that we'll be involved with, in kind of my lifetime of logistics. And so we still need to do it. We'll change the structure of the transaction. We won't take all stock,
Yeah.
right? Because part of the reason why we were taking stock was because we were going to have our people, rowing in the boat, to achieve those goals. And so if you knew those people weren't going to be in the boat, it would change how much cash you would take versus stock, and some of those dynamics would change, which would have alleviated the Tennessee thing. It would have alleviated a lot of the pressure. We never would have gone to Delaware under that backdrop, and I think more importantly, we would have, given the 8,000 teammates of the two companies plus the customers just a more more thoughtful transition around. I feel like that was a big missed opportunity, so to speak. Had we known that,
Yeah.
I think we would have still ended up with the same answer. It just would have been more elegant.
Well, now we kind of transition to like, what's the future look like? So you leave Omni, the deal is done. It's humming along as it is, but now you have your attention to do more interesting things or do new things. And I'd love to kind of get your thinking now. So what are you up to these days? And what are you most kind of looking forward to as our supply chain heaves and hoes with all the different catastrophes or crises day to day?
I thought 20, 2020, 21, and 22 were some of the most interesting years I was ever going to see. And, I've been in logistics through 9/11, through the financial crisis, through, now COVID. And, but, like the tariff thing has been super interesting as well. So like, I feel like our industry has had it's had quite a rough run over the last couple of years, for sure, to say the least. For me personally, Eve, which is our firm, has been plugging right along. So while myself and some of my teammates went in and were full time at Omni, I moved to Dallas from Florida to go be in that role. When I left Omni, we hung a for sale sign in the yard and moved back to what's home for us, which is Florida, which is where I grew up. And so I'm back here. I'm back installed in the Eve in my Eve station, and kind of doing what I love, which is working with transportation and logistics companies. In a lot of ways, unfortunately, not with Omni. But that's life, right? I mean, sometimes plans change, and I feel very fortunate because I'm back doing what I enjoy, and we're investing in companies. We're aggressively investing in companies right now. We think this is a really good time to be partnering with companies, and so I think we'll by the end of this year have done quite a bit over the course of the 12 months, and so we're very bullish on the future. Even though with all the tariff stuff going on, we're quite bullish, and I think the industry's set up for a nice 5 or 10 years in front of us.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about the reindustrialization of America. So even with these tariffs happening, like people still need stuff. Like as we all know in this business, freight doesn't stop. It just might be a little bit more expensive from time to time. So what is like the reindustrialization of America that you see through your lens at Eve?
Yeah, I mean, when we left Omni, there was a couple of areas that we felt like were just logical areas, and this was pre-tariff. So when we left Omni, we kind of come back and say, okay, what did we learn? Where do we want to be? I think we felt like nearshoring pre-tariff was a place of the places to be. And the reindustrialization of kind of the transportation space, again, pre-tariff. Both of the tariff provides an incredible multiplier to the tailwinds to both of those sectors, but the reindustrialization piece would be like the Elon and the robots, right?
Yeah.
It's there is very achievable ROI in the industry, and there are a lot of things that technology and automation are going to do for our industry. And if you think about Howard Lutnick and what he was talking about in the commerce secretary, they're talking about like moving more of those jobs back to the US, the need for innovation, and that innovation, because we only have so many people and so many jobs, but we're bringing a bunch of jobs back. So we're going to have to spend a lot on innovation, and that's going to drive a tremendous amount of impact in our supply chain. I don't know what the statistics are now, but at one point in the last 10 years, I think China's transportation as a percentage of their GDP was like 40%. I don't know if that's I mean, this is not something I've gone and verified, but like, I think it's a massive number. So if you think about, that's because so much of the manufacturing base occurs in China, right? And so if you're doing a lot of that manufacturing, a lot of your sourcing and finished goods and all the supplies necessary to do all of that, that will drive a tremendous amount of business domestically in North America for the nearshoring and onshoring activity that'll occur. The reindustrialization, in my mind, is just number one, the new industries coming back to North America and the US, but then also the amount of innovation and technology necessary to make those businesses efficient, so as to not have, to quote Dave Chappelle, a $9,000 iPhone. So we got to make sure we get that right.
Well, it's so interesting because, like, when you came to my class in East Lansing, we had just had Liberation Day. These tariffs had been put in place, and I had to like kind of scramble before the class to kind of create a little short lesson plan on EPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977.
You nailed it.
It's crazy because now you fast forward, like that's in litigation right now. It's at the federal appellate court. The lower court knocked the tariffs out. The upper court put them back, and it's on its way to the Supreme Court. So it's this crazy dynamic, and we were in the middle of the room as we're talking about this crazy moment in time. It's interesting to live in interesting times. That's a blessing, I think.
Yes, it is.
Now, the one thing I want to talk about as we kind of segue towards the end of our conversation is one of the companies you've recently partnered with is this company called Velocity out of Kansas City. And I love this business. What I've told so many people in the supply chain is all of the promises and the innovation around supply chain are predicated on connected systems, a connected supply chain, the trucks, the trailers, the warehouse, the forklift, every little bit and cranny of the yard, and then ultimately on the highways have to communicate. When those sensors fail, what do you do? And you likened Velocity earlier to like the geek squad. So what about Velocity was compelling to you? What do you look forward to seeing from that company?
Well, we were constantly, in the case of Omni, I'll just use Omni as the example because it's really what led us to Velocity. But in the case of Omni, we went from 200 employees to 4,500. We went from 10 locations to 110, one country to 25 countries. And as we rolled out all of these different locations, you've got technology standards that you're trying to roll out and make sure that they're uniform and that all of the systems talk to each other. All of your KPIs, your key performance indicators, are applicable from location to location, so you can measure how you're doing. And then you've got like so when you think about doing that, and you think about certain areas and how well they implement, it's very challenging, right? And a lot of the technology's just not been super user friendly over the years, right? You could go buy kind of these Roomba things that you see, I say Roomba, but like the vacuum things that roll up and down a pick and pack facility. Well, you can go buy that technology, but then you've got to train that technology how to work. And so then you got to like lay out the schematics in your facility so that the Roomba stays on that track. And like, so all these standards are very complicated, but they make a difference, right? So they make a difference about how well it works. A lot of people will see the promises of technology, but if it's not implemented the right way, they'll just say, oh, and I've been there, oh, it doesn't work, and what a waste of time and money, right? But the technology's advanced to a place where it's real. The ROI is massive. And automation is coming, automation of trucks at some level. Automation in facilities is already here, but it's going to go there's going to be more and more automation. And so the tech's there, but implementation and servicing, so the installation, monitoring, maintain, repair, and replace function, these tech companies might be tiny. Like I was talking to a CEO of a huge LTL business, and they're like, I've got this dimensionalizing software that I can deploy. I just have to put it over every one of my dock doors. I have 3,000 dock doors. And it doesn't really work until it's deployed in all 3,000 dock doors, and the tech company has 12 people.
They can design good tech, but they can't service and monitor.
That is the entree point, the entry for Velocity, because Absolutely. They're like, hey, we can deploy in, deploy in thousands of locations, get it done for you in 60 days, and you're up and running. So if the savings are there, in that implementation can be capitalized, and then you want to make sure those things are working, because when one goes down, it kind of negates the power of the network of all that technology. So we encountered a lot of those issues. We lived it, and we wish that we had known Velocity when we were rolling all those things out, because they could do it on a global basis, and they can do that for your fleet. They can do that for your facilities. And I think it's incredibly powerful, and it's no surprise to me. The company's growing like crazy, and they have lots of opportunities, and they're amazing people. And I love going to their innovation lab. If anybody's in Kansas City, swing by. If you're traveling through, go to Kansas City, go to their innovation lab. It's a window into the future. And I love going in there because there's like drones and all kinds of stuff flying all over the place.
LiDAR systems. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I'm like, this is where we're going. It's cool.
Well, JJ, I know we're over our time. I typically do this for 45. We went a little bit long. I cannot thank you enough for kind of sharing your story and helping us understand like what your career path has been. It is one of the most fascinating in all of supply chain. If people want to learn more about you and what you're doing, or if they're a business owner looking to understand, like, hey, how do I find someone like an Eve Partners? Where can people find more about you?
I think like we have a website. I mean, that's an easy place, but I'm on LinkedIn. You can message me on LinkedIn. It's an easy way to get in touch with us. And thanks for having me. I have a great admiration for what you do and what you've done, and keep it up, man. It's great.
I'm such a fan. I will make sure to put those in the show notes, but I appreciate you making time today, JJ. Thank you for joining us for episode 100, my friend.
Yeah. Thank you, bud.
Well, everybody, we're at the end of today. 100 times we've been here. 100 times. I cannot thank you enough for supporting me and following me and enjoying the content that we continue to do. Whether you're watching us live or you're listening to the audio only version, this doesn't happen without you and your support. I got to thank my friends over at DAT, Dial a Truck, 1978. They've been helping people manage the world of freight, the biggest source of data and analytics in transportation, bar none. Ken Adamo would agree with me there. If you want to save some money on that, look at the show notes. You will find a link to save 10% for the next 12 months. That's phenomenal. And of course, thank you to my new friends, new sponsors, Genlogs, technology, hardware, software, leadership, going the extra mile to set a new standard of care for the transportation industry. That's freight intelligence. Now, you will find me again eventually. I have some travel up ahead, and we will see you again next time. As always, thank you for taking the time. I certainly hope this was educational or entertaining or a bit of both. We'll see you at episode 101, coming to you at some point in the future. And then I hit the